And we're convening today because we are in LA. It is NFT LA Week, and we are planting our flag to let you know that we are fully engaged in this space. We're going to start in a conversation about arts and culture. Then we're going to get into the making sense of the metaverse. Then we are going to tell you what's actually working in Web3. And then, and stay tuned, we're going to be doing a Trojan Spotlight, where you get the privilege for the first time ever to see 4 of the hot, extraordinary Web3 projects that are happening right here on campus. And that's just a very small sampling of what's happening across the USC campus. So as we say in Trojan Land, fight on. I'd like to invite on our first moderator, Ashley Lutz, editor of Fortune Magazine and Business Insider and Driving Strategy and Innovation. And with Ashley, you can invite up your amazing panelists, and I will get out of the way, but I'll be back. So stay tuned to your webcast. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ashley Lutz. I am the Director of Audience for Fortune Magazine, and my job is to read the news all day. And at times the world can feel incredibly sad and polarizing right now. But when I was researching this panel, I felt a hope and an optimism that I haven't felt in a really long time. The way that Web3 is driving innovation, the way that it's breaking down the power structures and empowering artists and communities and new voices to be heard is just incredible. And I am honored to be here with 3 incredible individuals who are driving this revolution. So I would love for Maliha Avidi, Ryan David Mullins, and Kartik Hosenegger to come up, and they are going to be introducing themselves. I'm not sure where you guys want to sit. We could have Maliha here. Yeah, thank you. They are going to introduce themselves in their own words, and they're going to show you some of their projects, and then we will get into the panel discussion, and we will have a brief Q&A at the end, so please think of your questions for us. So first we will start with Maliha.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Hey everyone, my name is Maliha Avidi. I'm an artist, an author, and an activist, and also the creator of Women's Rights. I'm so excited to be speaking with everyone and with Ashley today about NFTs, about Web3, answering any questions that you guys have. Women's Rights is an NFT project. Well, it started off as an NFT project, and we're trying to use the technology and innovation of Web3 to advance women's rights and girls' education. And I have been creating art for social justice for 10 years now, so what I'm doing in the metaverse is an extension of the work that I've been doing for the past decade. And yeah, really excited to be here. So thank you so much for having me. Over to Ryan.
What's up, everybody? My name is Ryan Mullins. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called On Life. We are the creators of a game that's called Aglet. And part of the metaverse discussion for us is that we actually believe the metaverse is not that you hang out in virtual worlds. We view the metaverse as more like a virtual layer or a kind of, let's say, a digital grid that exists on top of the physical world, right? So that instead of us escaping into virtual worlds, what if we could actually make reality magical and more interesting again by encouraging activity to move around in culture, move around, somebody's moving around in the room, but to encourage people to move around in culture, right? And as somebody who's really into sneakers and streetwear, for me, collection and digital assets, alternative asset classes was something that just kind of clicked for me. And so this is my 3rd startup now. I operate with something I call the Prometheus principle, which is what if you could democratize technology and tools and give access to these technologies and tools from the elites, as Prometheus stole it from fire from the gods and sort of gave it to everybody. What happens when we give tools and technologies of the next generation to all of you? What would you do with it? What would you create with it? And so being able to build a playable map of reality, but also opening up the design side so that people like yourselves can design the next great sneaker brand, the next great apparel brand, and actually drop NFTs in locations around the world to try to build up your own brands. But the key here is, how do you connect that to the physical world? So merging the online and the offline worlds. So that's why the company is called On Life. You don't live online or offline anymore, you live on life. So how do you bridge the two worlds together? And that's what we think is the future of the internet. Pumped to talk about some of the questions that Ashley has. Thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Karthik Asanagar. I'm a founder of a company called JumpCut. I'm also a professor at the Wharton School at Penn and was previously a founder of a company called Yodel. JumpCut is a Web3 entertainment company that collaboratively creates narratives with communities. We connect writers with communities and develop stories and use NFTs to give the communities creative and financial co-ownership of the story universe we create together. To describe what we do, I'll use the example of one of our upcoming projects called Uppercut. Uppercut is a immersive, gamified narrative experience we've created, or we are creating for action fans. A couple aspects of this project that's unique and different from traditional NFTs. One is that the NFT gives people access to a community-driven narrative experience that is designed or created by Hollywood's finest creatives. For example, Kevin Tanchorian, who is the writer of Book of Boba Fett, the Mortal Kombat series, is one of the creators of the story universe, the narrative experience people will be playing out after getting the NFTs. The other piece that's unique is that NFT holders get to upload backstories and lore for their NFT characters and can up-level those NFT characters by participating in the storytelling experience. So that's a little bit about Uppercut. We'll talk more about that. I have a quick also what we think is an exciting announcement. Because this is an upcoming project, we thought it'd be nice to offer 25 spots in the allow list for our project to you guys here. So for those of you who are not familiar with it, an allow list is essentially if your demand exceeds the NFT supply, everyone on the allow list is guaranteed access to the NFT. So we're giving away those allow list spots. And if you don't have a wallet already, or you haven't had experience with crypto, that's not a problem. You can just drop us your Twitter handle or your email, and we'll send you a tutorial on how that's done. And there's a quick 30-second trailer. I don't know if we can play that to give you a sense of what that narrative experience is like.
Of how incredibly inspiring this group is. And so for our first question, our event tonight is called the Tokenization of Everything. And so I wanted each of our panelists, in your own words, to describe what tokenization means to you and how it relates to shared ownership and is at work in your current projects. Malika, you had a really good answer for this when we were talking a few minutes ago, so I would love for you to lead.
Thank you. So tokenization for me is, I guess, giving opportunities to the community that you're creating. That can look like anything from like an NFT actually being a token, because let's say in the Women Rights Collection we have 10,000 NFTs, so we have 10,000 tokens, which are going up in value, you know, depending on how the project is performing and what kind of collaborations we have. But another example of tokenization would be how each women rights holder, so we have 5,700 holders for the 10,000 NFTs, and each NFT holder can use their NFTs to build their brand using, again, that NFT. So let's say you have a makeup brand, you have, I don't know, a soda brand, a clothing brand, whatever, and you can put that NFT onto whatever merchandise you want to create, or anything really, and earn up to $100,000 using that NFT. And in terms of even marketing, the more awareness Women Rights has, that's also being contributed towards, you know, that one token that you have and building a small business around it. So essentially, if you have like 10 Women Rights, you can earn up to $1 million, and that's like a part of what tokenization is, at least to me. And I think another version of tokenization is like just freedom for artists, and I guess removing the middleman as well, and just artists and creatives being able to, you know, tokenize their work and have ownership of their own work, and just have more accessibility and freedom as well. So that's what tokenization is to me.
Well, for me, it's redefining arts and entertainment as the panel title. I think it, not to sound like a douche here, but when in 2018 this was called Sneaker Crypt, right? So we were doing NFTs, 2018, and there was something called Crypto Kitties that everybody was kind of into, right? Crypto Kitty owners up there, but that's when I wanted to put sneakers on the blockchain. And why I wanted to do that was because you started to see how all these people were building brands on YouTube, people were building brands on all kinds of different social media sites, and I didn't like how they weren't able to monetize the content itself, right? And so it was this really lame way where you had to kind of outsource your business model. And why arts and entertainment is interesting here is because why I mentioned the 2018 thing is because the technology itself of an NFT or of tokenization has actually evolved almost zero. The technology is the exact same. What changed, though, was what I call a digital flux capacitor, which was the pandemic, right? The pandemic kind of thrust us like 5 years into the future, where how do artists and musicians make money? They make money through touring, so ticket sales and merchandise. They don't really make that much money unless you're Dre or something from the actual music itself. So NFTs or tokenization became a perfect way for those who depend for their business and for their revenue, right, their own economy, on physical goods like merch or even ticket sales. This became the perfect way for them to, let's say, monetize or interact with and engage with their fan base in a whole new way, right? So tokenization, for me, I guess the real sexy way of saying it is tokenization is just a digital representation of an asset on a blockchain. That's the sexy marketing way of saying it. But if you look at the unsexy way of saying it, for me, it's about what you were saying, the ownership economy, right, is the ability to own sort of the means of labor, let's say, right, is that whatever you're creating, you can now monetize that instead of depending on, banner ads, programmatic subscription. Not that there's anything wrong with those, get your bag, but it's about how do you monetize the content that you create. And tokenization is one means of being able to do that. And so the ownership economy is crucial. And then given that you guys are the next gen of creators, it's that creator economy. As you guys, as we said, Prometheus principle, how do you have the tools and the technology to be able to create stuff and then monetize it in a way that's like respectful to the fact that you're creating amazing content? You're the ones driving culture. Why do you have to outsource the business model? So there's a lot of different aspects to it, but the one that was most important for me was the business model aspect of tokenization. And I think that's what we saw. and why NFTs kind of blew up was the people who drive culture are the entertainers and media, and they turn to NFTs as a way to kind of overcome some of the, let's say, revenue shortfalls that they lost because they couldn't do it, right? So that's what tokenization, at least one part of it, is for me.
Well, to avoid being repetitive, I will talk about maybe a broader idea of tokenomics, because tokenization has been addressed. So tokenomics is about balancing supply and demand, right? So in a traditional economy, it's not that complicated. You have a supplier and I'm a manufacturer, you just contract, you're done. But if your supply is decentralized, it's a distributed community, it's more complicated. So in our world, if we produce a Star Wars and one of you suggested the character Luke Skywalker, and somebody else wrote the backstory for Luke Skywalker, somebody else contributed $200 so we could go make this, somebody else contributed $1 million, and someone else contributed artwork and helped us imagine what this character would look like. How do we make sure we understand everyone's contributions and reward them appropriately? We record everything that they're doing and record it in the blockchain. We give them tokens for their contributions, and a contract then essentially dictates how token ownership translates into the value that's created being shared among the community. And that's a contrast to the traditional Hollywood model, where many might contribute, but there are a few people who own a lot of control in that ecosystem, who might take the lion's share of the pie, and an unknown writer who is getting their first chance at this story might have created a great story universe, but might have lost control of the IP, might actually get very little out of it. Right? Tokenomics is a way for us to really measure value and ensure value is shared when it's created.
Thank you. Yeah, Cardiff, you're in the entertainment capital of the world, so I think that your story-driven NFT vision is so interesting and so important. So my next question is for Ryan. Ryan, you were the, I believe, Director of Future Trends at Adidas. So you were sort of in the physical sneaker world, and now you were in the sneakerverse through Aglet, which you had talked about a little bit, but I just wanted to kind of hear your perspective on, kind of making that shift and, how creating Imagine things for the physical world is the same and different, although, you would say it's all one world, but, how is it different, how is it similar, and how do you approach it differently on the blockchain?
Sure. Yeah, so I was Director of Future Trends at Adidas for 2.5, 3 years. I'm still trying to figure out what that means. No, it was like a forecasting job. So what I did internally was like, how do you build startups in a big organization, right? So it's how do you do innovation within a giant corporation? And some of the learnings from Adidas is an amazing brand. You actually see some of the really cool stuff that they're doing now with like Bored Ape Yacht Club, with POAP, proof of attendance protocol and stuff like that. So a lot of the stuff that I learned there was not so much on the blockchain space, because I was instrumental in kind of helping kick off a lot of their stuff, but it was more about how they interacted with the creative community. It was like, what if you could democratize, let's say, like the Kanye model, the Yeezy model, where it was one of the first times a brand had kind of opened the doors to its products and to its design, and kind of gave them the key, and was like, hey, build a brand powered by Adidas. And so, Yeezy became this, billion-dollar massive success story that kind of redefined the sneaker industry. It was instrumental in sort of launching sneakers into what it is today, right? It's a bunch of sneakerhead fanatics that it's a multi-billion-dollar company now. So, what if you could democratize that, though? I don't know if you saw the slide, but it was like, who's the next Virgil Abloh? And so, why Virgil Abloh is one of my heroes is because he didn't take the normal path. He didn't go to design school. He was actually an engineer and an architect. He did not work for a creative director for 10 years to try to figure out the ins and the outs of that. He actually just built what he thought was dope. Honestly, it was just like, here's what we think is dope here, this easy team, and we're going to build it. And luckily, Adidas gave, as Kanye says in that song, all I needed was the infrastructure. They gave him the infrastructure, and look what he was able to do. What if you could democratize that and sort of enable anyone, again, to build their own brand where you can start digitally with NFTs or digital assets of any kind, build up an audience, and then be able to make the transition into a physical product. And so the metaverse, for me, is like the internet in the sense that no one company built the internet in their garage in Palo Alto, right? The internet's probably the unsexiest thing. It's literally protocols that govern data packet exchanges between internet computers. That's what the internet is, right? If you ask most people what's the internet, I asked my 6-year-old the other day, what's the internet? He said Netflix. If you ask most people what is the metaverse, they'll probably say Roblox or Decentraland or something like that. No, that is one part of it. The metaverse for me is these new protocols that will connect the physical world and the digital world, right? And if you can somehow figure out how to unlock the creative community through all these new tools, I think that's what the metaverse is. And so my job at Adidas as sort of a future forecaster was basically proving to everyone that you can know the future. You can't know the future in the sense of like knowing what configurations are going to happen. But if my son comes up here and dumps out a whole bucket of Legos in front of you guys, we don't know what he's going to build, but we know the pieces that he has, right? It's just what configurations are these going to go into, and what will he build? And so forecasting is very much like that, where you see what the pieces are that we all have, and then try to make bets on kind of, well, what configurations are going to go together. That was my role at Adidas, and with Web3 and blockchain, it was what you're seeing with OnLife and Aglet is my bet on how all these things will fit together. And as I said, sorry, I'm monopolizing it here, but as I said, with building a playable map of reality, this is how do you start putting, if you take like Crypto.com Arena downtown, how can you start making those events more interesting at the event itself, the physical place? Because if you have a grid where you can drop NFTs at that location, or concerts or educational institutions, where these are now places of Internet of Places, basically, right? And that's kind of the future that I foresee. And Adidas was instrumental in helping unlock some of these ideas for what Web3 looks like going forward. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Malia, my next question is for you. So with Women Rise, you created 10,000 pieces of randomly generated art depicting, my interpretation was the women building Web3. So you have, coders and scientists and just beautiful art. And I was really curious how you kind of began this undertaking, what inspired you. I know I met your husband earlier and he was very instrumental in the process, but how did you kind of go about this process? And what most surprised you when you were going through it?
So with Women Rise, and especially like when it came to the artwork and the concept of it, like I mentioned earlier, I've been creating art for social justice for 10 years now, which is like a very traditional field. So I've been able to work with incredible companies like New York Times, Google, Adobe, organizations such as the UN, UNHCR, and a lot of fun, all to campaign for social justice and again create art for social justice. But when it came to Women Rise, a lot of the things came very naturally to me. So for example, the artwork, the assets, because it's portraits of women. Then the concept around it, where we wanted to make sure Women Rise is talking about women's rights and girls' education and activism and celebrating women in various fields where we feel like there's a lack of appreciation for female founders or female leaders and female educators. So that's where sort of believe it or not, Women Rise artwork took 7 days to complete, and then the entire concept came to us very, very naturally and very quickly as well. But it was the community building part that took us 3 months, and one thing that I'm kind of seeing in this space is like with new creators is like they see some of the projects and they're like, oh, this happened like overnight. And some of the biggest projects in this space happened like over a very long period of time, especially when it came to creating a community. And I think that's sort of like is the process. Like art is like one part of it. The 10,000 tokens is like one part of it, and the community is like the biggest part of it. For Women Rise, and that's how we see like the future of Women Rise progressing as well. Whether you're talking about like our ultimate goal in the metaverse is to create the first school in the metaverse where the 258 million children were currently out of school. But we're also trying to like set an example through the work at Women Rise by having two sides to a project. So it's not just about social justice, and it's not just about making money and business. It's supposed to be creating business opportunities and, you know, taking our holders a bit closer to financial freedom on the business side of things, where we have partnerships with Snapchat, Ledgers, Coinbase, and so many others, so many NDAs. So many others. I swear, I was just gonna say a few of them. I was like, no. And then on the other side of it, we want to make sure that we are working with organizations, we are working with, you know, and I've been working with these organizations for several years now. So we have donated to Malala Fund, Soul Afghanistan School, the Girl Effect, and we are working with them actively. So for example, this organization that we are closely working with, they evacuated 150 girls out of Afghanistan, and they're educating them in a different country. And at the moment in Afghanistan, there hasn't been access to education for girls for more than 180 days, which is why when we think about the school in the metaverse, which is going to be through a phased approach, is so important to us, and that's going to be on the social justice side of Women Rise. So we're essentially trying to make sure that in Web3, when we are reimagining our business technology, we do have real-world, I guess, applications, but not just for the US and not just for the UK and not just for Australia. We are talking about digital divide as well. We are talking about communities that were left behind in Web 1 and Web 2. So let's not make the same mistake in Web 3.
Transitions perfectly into my last question for our Q&A, which is for Kartik. Kartik, okay, I see you down there. So Kartik, you're probably, I would say, the nation's foremost expert in algorithms and how they relate to the digital economy. And as we know, algorithms can help to serve the needs of the collective, but they can also be used to sort of serve the interests of people in power. So, you know, as we were just talking about, how will we kind of make sure going forward, and you as a pioneer in this field, that Web3 remains inclusive and decentralized, which is the vision?
Fine, sir, good luck. Yeah, so it's an interesting question. In fact, the original motivation for starting Jump Cut was actually to solve an inclusion problem in Hollywood. Hollywood has historically been an old boys club. Decisions get made based on gut and relationships, and a lot of people get excluded. And the original thesis was that we can use data as a way to de-risk projects by creators who haven't historically had access. And so we collected a ton of data and tried using data to de-risk projects, and data was a meaningful input, but by itself it was not sufficient. And that's when we realized communities are a great place to go. And communities, if you create communities that are diverse, then that community will ensure that you are inclusive as well. So we have been striving to ensure that our communities are highly diverse, and as a result, you know, the creators we support are also not just the creators who've already succeeded, already proven in Hollywood, but a lot of emerging new voices. And in terms of making the communities diverse, this is going to be a very big challenge for Web3 over the next 12 to 18 months, because Web3 is, you look at, if you want to get into Bored Apes, right now I don't know the current price, but it's over 100 ETH, which is $300,000 to get into that community. So it's super expensive to get into those. So financially, it's not inclusive, very male dominated. So again, not inclusive in that sense. So we're trying to do a few things. So for example, with Uppercut, we're going to give away 100 plus scholarship NFTs, which is just people who cannot afford to buy the NFT. Here's a free NFT for you so you can join the community. That's one example of something we're doing. Even the writers we're bringing in, we have my colleague Winnie is leading this project, which is around using, inviting people who own women-centric NFTs to bring their NFT and also come create stories and lore around their NFT character. And so that's to invite more women-centric stories and to have holders of women-centric NFTs come in and do that. And to also bring in Hollywood women writers into the project. So I think it just, algorithms, data are one tool in the arsenal and could be misused, but could also be used. But I think it's just one piece. It requires many other pieces in there. And I'll shout out to my colleague Winnie, who produced, This Close for Sundance TV, which was the first show to have deaf creators and deaf actors in it. She produced Chambers for Netflix, which was the first show on any major network to have a Native American lead character in it. So she is, been championing inclusion and diversity for a while, and so she leads a lot of this effort within the organization.
I could talk for hours more. There are questions we didn't even get to that we had prepped, but I could take, I think, one question from the group, or a couple questions. So does anybody have a question for our panelists? I've been told we can take 2 questions. Okay, yeah?
Hi there, my name is Adil. Thank you guys for doing this panel, it was super helpful. With the intersection of Web3 and arts and entertainment, it seems like right now, the popular thing is like profile picture NFTs and like get rich quick schemes, ways for people to make money and appreciate their assets in the future. Do you think there needs to be a narrative shift in the Web3 space, so the focus isn't so much on making money into appreciated assets, but rather being a part of the creative community?
Absolutely, but I think that also comes from the community, and that comes from, when you're investing in a project, when you're buying into a project, what are you buying for? You're buying for, whether you want to, well, there are 2 things, like whether you're buying to buy an NFT where, you are trying to create digital assets because you couldn't, afford stocks, or you're not, you felt a bit excluded from that world as well. And you are trying to experiment, because we, at Women Rights, we have so many first-time buyers of NFTs that have never invested in stocks. We have so many students as well who are trying to learn about the space, but are also trying to start their investing portfolio. So I feel like there are 2 different things when it comes to investing and then get-rich schemes, because get-rich schemes could be coming from unethical founders who are running, rug pull projects, again, unethical projects that, they intended, which is why doing your research into founders is very important. But I don't personally see anything wrong with people wanting to invest in this space, because they are trying to get started. And I feel like when it comes to people from other countries, women, I think it's the fact that we talk about it in such a money, greed, we associate money with greed and stuff, which makes this kind of culture around that people almost feel ashamed. People of color, women feel ashamed that we can't talk about money openly, we can't talk about stocks or investing or creating our portfolio. whereas you see white men do it all the time. So nothing wrong with white men. I'm just like giving you I'm just giving you an example. And then on the other side, with community thing, I feel like until and unless you are in the community, and which you don't need to invest, you don't need to buy an NFT to be in a community, you will see that it's like, you know, you jump into a Discord, you go to Twitter, you go to Twitter Spaces. If it's not a community that you're vibing with, you don't have to stay there. You know, like you can read their roadmap, you can see sometimes roadmaps are BS as well, by the way. Like they can write whatever in there, but then until unless you're interacting with the founders, you're interacting with the community itself, the people around it, you can really judge whether this is for you or not, depending on whatever your values are. So I feel like from maybe a distance, it does look like that, oh, everybody's getting rich, everybody's like, you know, well, that's why we need you in this space, so that, you know, you can bring in a different point of view and be a part of the community that you want to, and maybe if it doesn't exist, you can start.
Yeah, I think that last part's important. I would kind of throw it back at you and be like, I think that's why you should build something that's not, you know, lame, if you think it's lame, PFP and whatever, right? It's like, imagine going into an ice cream shop and getting mad that you didn't get a Lamborghini. It's like, right now, like what you can do with the technology, I think, is digital art. You know, and I think there's a lot of people that are trying to build other things with it. But I think right now, just like online, how do you flex? You know, like what's social capital? A lot of it is just what you have access to, what you're able to show off. I know this will date myself, but if you think like late '90s around the .com bust, that they asked a lot of venture capitalists the question: is the internet overhyped? It was like 97%. Overwhelmingly, it was like, yes, overhyped. The next question was, will it be bigger in 5 years? And overwhelmingly, the answer was yes. Right? So how can those two things be true at the same time? And it was because we were at the beginning of a new era. What came after the bust was all the big Web 2, some of them now trillion-dollar companies. So I think what we're seeing is like just normal. It's like, here's a new thing. A bunch of people are using it. This is why we can't have nice things. But a bunch of people are using it for, I guess, just right now what this phase is. And the question is, what's the next phase? And if you get into, you know, trend analysis and start thinking about, yeah, what is the next phase? My bet is on the next phase will be real world integration. You know, how do you integrate NFTs into the real world for whatever use cases are maybe in your heads right now? So I would put it back on you and say, why don't you build something that maybe shows us how it can be more than that? You know, I'm not throwing that in your face. I'm just saying, like, what are you going to build? Maybe we're pumped to see what the next the Web3 stuff that the 3 companies or whatever. But build something else, please. Oh.
Great. Well, we have time. I'm not sure if we'll be hanging out after this, but thank you all so much. You're all truly so inspiring, and I learned a lot from talking to you. So thank you. I know the group was thrilled to hear from you as well.
Thanks, Ashley.
So before these awesome folks leave, follow them on Twitter, get into their DMs if they'll answer you, follow their Discords, continue the conversation. That's what Web3 is about. This is just a Kickstarter to a conversation, but these people are fire, and they're just getting started. Particular shout out to Malika and the work she's doing with the United Nations. You know, like she said, this is a very complicated world, and there's a lot of people that are really suffering right now. 6.5 million people have already left the Ukraine, and they are the new diaspora. And so I think that we can use Web3 for good. I think we can use Web3 to energize communities around the world. And I think we can use Web3 to make serious global change. So shout out to all the people who are doing that and to the people who are trying to do that. And with that, for those of you who want to be versed in the metaverse, in case you're not already, please join me in welcoming our fireside chat with my friend Lee. Lee, come on up here. Let's make some room for you. Have a seat right here, my friend. I am really good. I'm better now because you're here. So
Oh, we'll see.
we'll see. We set a high bar, but you know, if it works for will.i.am, it works for me. I mean, you know, we called and did a little background checking on you. So when Lee got started in this space, and I don't just mean the Web 3 space, I mean the Web 1 space, the Web 2 space, not to date you, but remember,
Yes.
I ran AIM and AOL and People
Yeah.
Connection, so I can go there with you if you want to. Lee did all of the technology background and platforms for will.i.am for many, many years. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the breadth of Will's work, it really does dip into, and he really did play across so many technology platforms. And it was a lot, and that was actually Lee, so just to be clear.
No, there were many people involved.
I
I'm not
know.
taking credit like that.
I know, I'm giving you credit, because, you know, we won't say hashtag mother, but that's how it is. So, after that, Lee was very involved in VR, but not the VR that you think of when Meta puts on a headset and is doing gaming. We're talking VR when we were doing industrial applications. He was working with steel manufacturers, doing CAD designs in the metaverse. And then right after that, he was deployed to Japan, where he did all the VR for the Olympics. Now he is partners with Kathy Hackle. If you're not familiar with Kathy, she is known as the sort of godmother of the metaverse. And they are doing incredible projects that Lee will tell you about across fashion, art, design, for some of the biggest brands in the world. He may not be able to name the brands just yet, but he'll talk to you about what they're thinking about. And so with that, welcome, my friend. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm just glad to be in Los Angeles. I'm from Portland, Oregon, and like the rain today is kind of what I've been used to. So I've been here. I got here early. Like I've been here a couple of days, so I'm just glad to have some sunshine. Yeah, I kind of brought the rain with me. My bad. That was on me. I'll take that.
So let's go with, you know, breaking it down. If we can have Lee's first slide. Thank you.
It's a mess. I recognize it's a mess. It will make sense.
Okay.
This is how my brain looks.
Okay, this is your brain in Web3.
Yes.
So break it down for us and tell us how to think about the metaverse in new and different ways.
Okay, so we tend to overcomplicate this concept of like Web 3.0. We have so many buzzwords just flying left and right, and they all mean different things. This concept of Web 3, metaverse, where do NFTs go into place? What does AR and VR have to do with it? What's the difference between AR and VR? Ultimately, and I can't take credit for the statement, this was Kathy who came up with this, but the simplistic way of looking at the metaverse is it connects people, places, and things. And each one of those three categories have subcategories where there are platforms. So like this first one, me, that's me. I go by the name Keebs. Most of my friends call me Keebs. You're welcome to call me Keebs. So that's me. And we're used to this idea of a username and a profile pic, and we have been for a long time, since AOL. That was not my AOL Instant Messenger name. It was way goofier than that, and that's pretty goofy. So now we're adding in this concept of like yourself. You're getting into this idea of like your self-identity. What does an avatar look like? Not what does an avatar that a company wants to put on you look like. What do you look like to yourself in a digital environment? Right now, sometimes those ideas are limited, but there are platforms like VRChat that allow you to kind of sky the limit with what does that identity look like. And that profile picture of me is actually what my avatar looks like in VRChat. I don't know why that identifies with myself, but it does. And if I put on a different avatar, it doesn't feel right? Like we're in this weird new discovery of self-identity. Where do you take those? How do you get to those places? That's where Meta steps in when you look at virtual reality. Fortnite, when you're looking at just communicating or playing games with each other, or Roblox, or even like there's a new platform called Core that if you're not on, you know what Core is, go check it out. It's a really cool platform. I started working and had friends at Wave VR when they were trying to pull in music into VR space, and they found how to bring in live entertainment into the metaverse through really interesting like Zoom concerts, which I never in a million years would have called that. And they've got this really good niche. but then where do you put the things in it? And this is where the NFT conversation comes into place. This is where augmented reality comes into place. There is a definite definition split between the AR, VR that we have to keep in mind. And then the wearables. NFTs and wearables kind of are in the same vein, but they're not always. You can unlock wearables in video games and find your identity in that. And maybe there's multiple ones out there and you don't legally own it, but you're still finding the identity within that.
So with that, and with finding your identity and being versed in the metaverse, you don't have to play Fortnite
No.
or go to a Travis Scott concert in the middle of a video game in order to be in the metaverse. You don't have to wear a VR headset to be versed in the metaverse. So where do you see the intersection of the physical world and the virtual world, and what is the invitation to go there?
Yeah. When we were at early internet days, the same question was being positioned. How do you live in the internet? Are we going to buy things online? I legitimately remember these questions. Are we going to buy things online? And then Amazon started selling books. And we're like, well, I guess I can, maybe this won't go through. eBay started selling like Tupperware and stuff, right? And we didn't really fully grasp what was coming, and it was foreign, and it was weird, and is someone going to steal my credit card? The answer is yes. These were all things that we weren't entirely sure about. And now we look at it and we're like, yeah, we live in Web 2.0. Now you live in Web 2.0 like this. This is how you live in Web 2.0. And we all do it. We all do it. And there's no shame in it because it's a human tendency. How do we do that when it comes to Web 3.0, metaverse? Well, COVID kind of showed a way that was already happening. We started using Zoom for our meetings. We started replacing aspects of our life in ways that we can connect to each other. We started making friends online. We started making real relationships. And the digital space, 3D space, as it allows you to explore deeper, whether it's in AR, whether it's in VR, whether it's in Fortnite, or whether it's in a Zoom conference call. When you're on a Zoom call and you replace the background to something that's not your unmade dorm room, that's a form of augmented reality, right? Like it's a low level form of it, but we're there. That's what we're effectively already doing.
Right. So I advise a lot of brands, and at IYA we build a lot of brands, we advise a lot of brands, and we have a lot of people on this live stream that are very curious about what role brands are going to play in the metaverse. So I'm curious how you're advising people, what types of things are you building for people, and why do they matter?
Well, the roles they're going to play, the roles that they should play, are the roles that they're playing in today's everyday world. I'm not looking for a Ready Player One nightmarish VR experience where there's pop-up ads all over the place and flying banners. That would be horrific. Nobody wants that. If you're trying to build that, stop. But those brands are going to be inside of these spaces as product placement. One example that I use is, I'm a big fan of Back to the Future, specifically Back to the Future 2. Has anyone? Just raise your hand real quick. All right, there needs to be more fans of Back to the Future. I can't imagine that movie without Pepsi, without Mattel, without Pizza Hut, without Black & Decker, and they were put in there in such a real and entertaining way, to the point where it was sometimes comedic. That's in a way how brands are starting to interact with the metaverse. Now, are they all doing the right thing? No, because that's not what brands do. They get lucky. Sometimes they're doing it just to understand where the technology is going, and there's not a real expectation that it succeeds. It is an experiment. Brands do experiment just like people, because those brands are ran by people. And so they're going through their own learning stages right now. So what I have to do when I'm talking with them is I say this: there's so many things that you can get wrapped up into, and you need this alphabet soup of different terminology. Don't get hung up on that. Don't worry about that. Know what impact you're trying to make, and know the demographic you're trying to make that impact with, and then work with somebody who knows the technology. I can't go do the job of our brands that I work with, because I don't know that brand that like they do. I don't know their demographic like they do. It's not what I do. So I have to lean on them to tell me what their impact is. They lean on me to tell them, hey, here's some ways that we can actually make this happen. Maybe it is in virtual reality. Maybe it is in a Fortnite concert. Maybe it's in an NFT. There's too many options, but that's how I approach it.
So last week, for those of you who didn't attend, it was Metaverse Fashion Week. And so we know there's Fashion Week in New York.
Yep.
We know there's Fashion Week in Paris. We just saw Fashion Week in the Metaverse. What were some of the things that came out of that were striking to you in terms of people trying new and different things? What do you think was working, and what do you think, you don't have to name the brand names, but things that were just ideas that should not be tried again?
I'm not going to answer the ideas that should be tried again, because I think every bad idea, if you do it enough times, you'll figure out how to make it a good idea. That's just like learning from your failures. Don't be afraid to fail with the experiment. But one of the things that I did get to witness, and it was definitely a moment for the metaverse, and I think it kind of got overlooked. We were here, I came early to 8i Studios, which is now over in Santa Monica, I think, where they do volumetric video capture. And Kathy Hackle and I were in the studio, and Kathy was streamed live via volumetric into Decentraland. For those who don't know, volumetric video is not like 3D video, it's video shaped like the object itself. Google
Like
it.
a hologram.
Like a hologram. It's basic. I hate saying that because like holograms aren't real, but it's as close of a like reality check as we can say. It's holographic video content, and we streamed that live into Decentraland, and she was literally in there. It was amazing. That was one of those like, that's a moment that happened.
Love that. And so those moments become the hallmark moments that people then build off of.
Yep.
When you think about it, some people say to me, well, you know what, I'm just going to sit this one out. Like the metaverse, it's not for me. I'll let my kids deal with it. I don't want to deal with it. But the truth is, if you're shopping on Amazon and you want to see what that lamp looks like in your room, that's augmented reality. And you can do that with almost any purchase that you would make there. IKEA does an incredible job doing that as well. And one could argue that you're in the metaverse figuring that out.
Yeah.
And so this is about people, places, and spaces. And this is about connecting people to ideas, to movements, and to each other. Because let's just face it, we just are coming out, hopefully, of a global pandemic where people have been not just in Decentraland, but they've been, disintermediated from their friends around the world. And so if this is where people can meet up, I know for me, when I was like sleeping outside Madison Square Garden to get tickets to Rolling Stones and the Police and other concerts when I was in high school, yes, I'm that old, that people are doing similar things to get into concerts in virtual world. And their first experience in virtual worlds in a concert may be the way that they remember that concert. And so you could say, well, wait until they go in real life. But for them and for others, it is real life. So this is how we are making things accessible. This is
Can I
how,
speak to that?
yes, of course you can speak to it. These were prompts.
I will forever remember Imogene Heap performing in Wave XR. I don't know if many people saw it, but it was such an amazing performance that lived and is now no longer accessible. I'm sorry you missed it, too bad. But it was beautiful. And I've known Imogene, I've gotten to work with her in the past, and I've seen her live performance in amazing locations. But the Wave XR experience was otherworldly because we didn't have physics. She could be there, and then she could burst into particles that turn into stars and fly past you. She was able to invoke emotion through the technology that you could only barely fake in the real world. So it will go in different directions.
Absolutely. So with that, we have time to take a couple of questions. So if anybody has a question, if you could stand up and speak as loudly as you can. Do I have any takers? Yes.
I'll stand up and speak loudly. What do you feel like your role is in the metaverse and all of this?
That is a great question. I have no idea. Let me be clear. This is new tech. There is a good and a bad thing about it. The good news is no one can tell you what to do. The bad news is no one can tell you what to do. You're on your own. You really are developing whatever it is, designing whatever it is that you come across. Now, maybe you're good at building community. Maybe you're organizing events. There's a place for that. Maybe you're good at leading development teams. This is effectively what I do, is I lead development teams and I build worlds. There's a place for that. Maybe you're really good at the development side of it and you've got a unique idea. To answer the gentleman's question in the back where he's like, do we need to change the dialogue of NFTs? I'll answer your question. Yes, we do. But to his point, the question is, what are we going to do with it? Because it right now is this art approach. But NFT as a technology is a receipt. It is a proof of a digital asset, not even a decentralized digital asset. Just the receipt is decentralized, and we can't lose space of that. One day, that is going to be utilized to track where digital assets are amongst the entire universe. And I really need to get this out, so I'm sorry for over time, but I have to say this.
Okay.
I'm a musician. That was my first trade. I'm a songwriter. I've got gold record produced music. I've been doing that for a long time. I understand how the music industry works. I also know where the music industry doesn't work, right? And I have a hard time tracking down where my royalties come from. But if I'm a digital 3D artist, I don't even have the ability to track where my 3D assets are going. Did someone just rip it and throw up on Sketchfab and now like it's popping in all of these indie games and I'm getting no credit for it because I made this really cool looking crate? How am I going to prove that? You can't yet. But this is the direction where like NFTs start to play a point. Are we there yet? Is that what's happening yet? No, but it is a direction. So like, yes, we need to change that narrative into, here's this technology, what can we do that's bigger?
I love that, and I love the idea of the transparency, because we are talking about the tokenization of
Yes.
everything. And so we're tokenizing credit, we're tokenizing art. De Beers has put their entire volume of diamonds on the blockchain. There are smart contracts attached to many different things, including rights. And artists actually get to participate in the after sales of their things, and they're just getting started.
Yeah.
So with that, I want to not only thank Lee for his getting us way better versed in the metaverse, but I also want to thank everyone for the questions, because you made the conversation that much more interesting. So let's give it up for Lee. And so Lee, it wasn't a plan, but Lee did a really great job of bridging us to our final panel, but don't forget to stay tuned for the Trojan Spotlights, where Joel Stein, if you don't know Joel Stein, then you're clearly not reading. But Joel Stein has been a journalist, a columnist, and an author that I've been reading for many, 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 many years. He writes cover stories for Time Magazine, is a journalist for many international business publications, and is really just a rock star in the way that he breaks things down and makes it accessible. And so we asked Joel to come in and talk to two of some of the smartest people that I know in the Web3 space today, to tell us when Web3 is actually working, what happens when it works. So Joel, if you could join me up here, where's Joel? Come on over. First of all, thank you so much for being here.
No problem, I'm a rock star.
You are a rock star as far as I'm concerned.
You got that, right?
And then let's bring up Jason and Jay and tell everybody when Web3 Jason and I, or actually I watched Jason when I was on his board, start a company together many years ago, and so seeing what he's doing at Alchemy and with his career is kind of remarkable. And Jay is a student at IYA, who's also doing amazing things, so Joel will tell you about it, but just shout out to our people. Thank you so much for being here.
Am I the only one with the microphone? Are we sharing the microphone? This is not COVID friendly. So excited to meet you guys. So first, some panel moderation best practices. Are you guys both okay with me making fun of your wives' hair?
I get slapped.
Anyone else has a problem? No. Too soon? What?
Way too soon.
You're still healing from the trauma? I hate your generation so much. You're gonna heal soon. Jesus. I know so little about all this, which you are all about to find out, but I'm really interested. I know that you have a platform in which other people are building apps in all of these kind of blockchain spaces, and I'm just basically curious about what people are building. Good, you don't have to share. I'm so relieved. That nervousness is really, it's back to like Gen Z, Gen X levels. So what are people building? What's exciting? What's been surprising? What's been popular?
Sure, and thanks Tina for having us. Really excited to be here tonight. So hey everybody, my name is Jason Shaw. I'm from Alchemy. So what you'll see on the screen is kind of a recent history of computing, right? Where we had the PC era and we were more productive, right? Because we had these new applications and most people use desktop computers, but people were able to build things primarily because of platforms that emerged, like Microsoft and Apple, in creating the operating systems that allowed those applications to exist. Fast forward a little bit forward, and not only were we more productive, but then we became more connected, right? You could take an Uber and go see your friend in 10 minutes instead of being stranded in, as I often was, in some lonely parts of San Francisco, not able to get around, and all of a sudden I could just hop in an Uber and be with my friends in 10 minutes. And over time we got more connected. You could also argue we got more disconnected through different mediums that also emerged, but here we are now in Web3, where there are new platforms, primarily layer 1, layer 2 blockchains that have emerged, and yet again, there's a need for a platform layer that's going to make it easier for people to build so that they can more quickly go to market. And so, for example, whether it was the original minting of the CryptoPunks or OpenSea, these are customers of Alchemy that have been able to go to market faster and more reliably because of a platform like ours. And so, over time, we'll see more blockchains emerge, more new applications. Jay and I were talking about this earlier, I'm happy to go into it more detail, but whether it's new financial applications, new gaming applications that we're starting to see, sure we're seeing NFTs often talked about in terms of context of art and communities, but also ENS names are NFTs and the ability to own.
Wait, what are those?
So Joel.eth is an ENS
Oh,
name.
yeah. So that's just like a wallet? What is that?
So that's effectively one way to talk about it is your digital identity. And it's a way to associate an address with a human readable or understandable ENS name. There's other ways we can talk about it, but that is actually an NFT. And interestingly enough, you could transact with one of those on OpenSea if you wanted to, both to actually represent your identity, but you could also sell Joel.eth to somebody if you wanted to. So there's a number of applications, but I'll pause there. No takers, it sounds like.
No, that was harsh.
But
There's the Will Smith joke. This is a general philosophical question, but I understand why we would need a platform just like we needed like Mosaic. Like, do we need a browser to go onto the web? We need something, a user interface. But then part of me is like, if this whole thing's supposed to be decentralized, and then we have like an intermediary who's probably taking a cut, like, aren't we back to where we were in Web 1.2? Like,
sure. Yeah, it's a great question, and I'll let Jay get asked difficult questions as well.
all right.
But to start this conversation, I think, to be totally candid, right, I think what's really interesting about Web3 is that it is sort of early days of Web 2 as if it were the year 2000, except it's with the attention and the importance that the internet has in 2022, right, where billions of people already use the internet. And so that's why even most people in Web 3 can't coherently explain the most useful applications or why things aren't more decentralized. And the reason why I bring that up is that we have this vision of a decentralized future, but the reality is that most things, whether it's core teams for giant protocols, highly centralized. Whether it's which wallets people use, I guarantee you anybody here that uses Web3 probably has MetaMask somewhere downloaded in their browser, and that is a popular wallet, and even though there are many more wallets, most people use MetaMask. And so whether it's teams, whether it's wallets, whether it's access that an infrastructure provider provides, like, we don't control the data lives on blockchain, but we make it easier to access. But sure, like, we're a popular infrastructure provider, and so it can feel centralized at times, but in reality, I think what we're just seeing over the first innings, where people are using a lot of these applications and a lot of these platforms, over time, a lot of these organizations are progressively decentralizing to take the ownership out of the hands of the team or the VCs, and with that, you'll also see, I think, more kind of interoperability across more open platforms. But the reality is that it's very early and a lot of things are centralized at certain different failure points.
And you brought a slide too, I think? No.
I did not bring a slide.
Neither did I. Yeah, I didn't do it. That's it. Do you want to explain what you're up to, and then I can pretend to understand it?
Yeah, totally. So, is Rari Capital, where we built basically a lending and borrowing provider that enables you to lend and borrow any crypto asset, right? So in the spirit of tokenization of everything, now it's lend and borrow everything, right? And that was pretty cool, right? At the time, there were only centralized providers that enabled you to lend and borrow, right? And they told you, you can only lend and borrow these assets with these risk parameters at these prices, right? And what we enabled was an open platform that enabled anybody to do it with anything, right? So we grew that platform to about $1.5 billion under management. And then at the end of last year, merged it in with a greater protocol called Tribe. And now I'm starting Pentagon, which has this one goal of, okay, how do we create the next stage of VC, right? In a land where capital is as cheap as it is today, right? How do you accumulate power in these Web3 decentralized systems while also ensuring that they stay decentralized?
And in DeFi, when people either on the borrowing side or the lending side, this is also insanely naive, but are they using that money to start a business, buy a car, or are they just using it to like trade crypto?
So a lot of them are using it to trade crypto, right? Which is really sad, right? The shit coins that you see trading on Twitter every day, right? The cum rockets of the world, or the
you don't bad talk cum rocket in front of me.
Right?
Me and Professor Galloway will come after you.
Right, but that's what a lot of people were using Fuse for and Rari for it, right? But
did that bum you out?
It did, right? It's disappointing, right? I thought that we had built technology that would actually like push the world better, but in reality, we enabled people to take out 4x leverage on cum rocket, right?
Yeah.
It
was
wait,
sad.
We
were hoping they would like start organic farms in Kenya or something? What did you see?
No. So like at the same time as that was happening, we also did see a bunch of really cool use cases. Right? So there was this one big currency called Olympus or Ohm, right? That went viral on Twitter, grew to $5 billion, which is insane, right? And nobody would give you margin on it, right? We gave people margin on it at whatever ratios they wanted, which meant that a lot of people made a lot of money, right? People made millions and millions of dollars using our platform. And the next thing we know, people are borrowing against their positions to buy homes, to buy cars, to even pay for like their children's schooling, and getting messages that showed that was really, really cool, right? But at the same time, that was probably like 1/50th of it, and the other 49 out of 50 were people taking out leverage on shitcoins.
Right. Okay, so one more general philosophical question that it's been in my head is that, again, really ignorantly, it seems like a lot of what's going on is traded. It is and not that much of our life is traded on some level. Like it's very baseball card to me. Like, and the idea that we're going to, and this is the name of the panel, commodify everything sort of bums me out. That there's spaces in my life, like there's nothing more annoying than when that relative like signs up for Rodan & Fields and they want to sell you whatever Rodan & Fields is. Or or they're calling because they just started to be a financial advisor and they want to get you under their management. Like, and when I'm a writer, and when I think about like doing Substack and and being my own marketing person, my own salesperson, and I'm like, that's not what I signed up for. I just want to write and get paid and be left alone. So like, are we turning everyone into like some kind of Kardashian, where we're all selling ourselves to each other and annoying the crap out of each other all the time on every little interaction? No, that wasn't this is a network. It wasn't a speech, it was just a question.
I mean, quite honestly, I hope not.
I'll give you an out to that. I will posit a moderately less dystopian view of how this might play out.
They're not interested in that.
I know. I heard the applause, and I was like, actually, maybe I'll stay away from this one. But I think that, I mean, not to be sort of too maybe idealistic about it, but people have always talked about technology as a tool, right? The printing press is a tool, the internet is a tool, and you get good and bad things with that. I don't think anybody would categorically say the internet has been a bad thing, but those same people can give you 10 examples on either side of the ledger. And so I think Web3 is no different. You're seeing, just like the early days of the internet, a lot of some of the most maybe salacious or childish or illegal activities in the very early days, to now give way to better and better and more real-world use cases. And so, just like the internet, sure, we digitized everything. Yeah, we digitized a lot of things, but we're all sitting here physically, and that still hopefully is a positive step where you benefit from the new technology where it's relevant. The fact that anybody can hop on Wikipedia and learn something new is great because not everybody can afford a huge library of actual encyclopedias. But at the same time, we hopefully see our families sometimes. We hopefully have real friendships. We hopefully go out and socialize with each other. And so my hope would be similarly, what are the benefits of the world that we can see through tokenization? There's a value perhaps to be had through that. And as a result, we can use the technology in specific ways without necessarily rewriting everything blindly and completely just letting the technology control us rather than us leveraging it to solve specific problems.
Wikipedia is an interesting example because it's in some ways the least tokenized thing possible, right? Jimmy Wales creates it, it makes no money off of it basically. It's all people doing it for free and no one's even profiting off their data. So it's kind of the least tokenized example of what was possible. And he's like the only one who did it. Everyone else figured out a way to make money off of your attention. So I'm just interested in you picked that. What are the things that you're afraid are going to get tokenized that maybe shouldn't, besides your kidneys?
I mean, everything, right? Your time, right? Maybe even the selection of your future, right? Putting that in the hands of the community, right? This idea that everything can be tokenized, right? We need to have rules here, right? In the traditional world, that's the government's responsibility, and you cross your fingers and you hope that the SEC will do something here, but in reality, SEC just harasses founders that are actually trying to innovate, right? They aren't doing anything for this industry, so we need to come up with self-regulation, right? That's really the only way that I see us paving a path that is a viable path that doesn't end in our own demise.
And what are the guardrails that you think need to be put up?
Yeah, I don't know. This is something I'm still thinking through, right? This thesis is still pretty new, right? I've been thinking about the tokenization of everything for a while, but I just can't see any other way that this plays out, and that's why I'm trying to think. Okay, how do we regulate this?
I feel like 10 years ago, I wrote a column in which I bought some college kid's percentage of his future earnings in order to pay off some of his college debt while he was in school. Is that and that's kind of messed up. And I really harassed him for the column. I kept calling him and telling him he should be studying and working harder. I was the worst kind of VC. But is that the kind of thing where you're oh, maybe we shouldn't own people's future that way?
Yeah, I mean, you could go even deeper, right? What if you owned an NFT that determined where he was going to go to college? Right? Realistically, that's a valuable that's a valuable NFT to somebody, valuable NFT to colleges because they all want you to go to their college so that you spend money there, right? So that's an NFT that has a price to it, and there's a reason for that to be made, right? So this guy will make it, he'll sell it because he maybe needs the money, and suddenly somebody's dictating that one piece of his future. Now imagine that for every single decision in his life, and that's where I don't want us to go.
And you don't seem as worried. What are you actually seeing people do or suggest or try on your platform where you are a little bit concerned and not sure if it's the best idea?
Sure. And to be clear, I think it's good to be a healthy amount of worried, right? I think if people were more aware in the early 2000s or in the early 2010s about some of the pitfalls that we would eventually all view as incredibly obvious with some of the Web 2 platforms, I think that we would have been more thoughtful and people would have used their psychology degrees instead of the product managers building largely addictive products to instead ideally increase more social value than what we saw. So I think it's healthy. I think this balance of concerns and skepticism is, I think, a really useful thing. So, I mean, that being said, I think some really exciting projects that I've started to see emerge. There's a company called Syndicate that's trying to reimagine how investing happens and using the construct of a DAO to then allow for the way in which investment decisions are made, the way they...
Does everyone know what a DAO is? I don't know what design is. They do, yeah, of course they do. Okay. Sorry.
You know your audience, right?
Yeah, I didn't know.
I learned from the dystopian comments who we were among. But so seriously, I mean, I think that's great, right? People talk about more inclusion in VC. Well, what if you actually just change the rails rather than trying to only change it from a standpoint of who's working at certain firms. I think it'd be great if you actually change the constructs, because that might be a more sustainable way of reimagining investing. So that's a great example. Gitcoin is a great example where you're actually seeing public goods be funded through a new type of basically financial support that leads through this concept through quadratic voting, where somebody who doesn't necessarily give the most amount of money could actually lead to a larger amount of matching that's done through high volume, small dollar donations. And these things are real things. I just met with a team the other day that got their original start through a Gitcoin grant, and now here they are 5 years later as a successful project in the Web3 space. So,
what's their project?
So I won't name the specific company, but they basically do education, and they wouldn't have started the company, like no VC would back them. They didn't come from money, so they didn't have any money to start out with. And like, there's not really, for the most part, like scholarships for companies. You know, it doesn't really exist, but there are a lot of stakeholders that might benefit from something existing that if they had the construct to fund it, they would. And we've seen changes in like crowdfunding laws in recent years, but nothing that's kind of moved with the pace and the scale that a lot of these new technological times cultural times social constructs have created. So there are a lot of these real examples. They just don't frankly get the same amount of attention that a lot of the more frivolous things do, because they're harder to understand and they don't sometimes have the same scale that some of these more kind of loud and kind of obvious cultural NFT projects get, for example.
And there's less, capitalist fever of trying to make money, right?
That's a great point. I mean, like, I haven't heard of anybody, to use some of Jay's examples, who have been able to like make millions and millions of dollars and kind of just from flipping Gitcoin grants. That's like not a thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's intentionally designed around public goods and not just trying to make a quick buck or not just trying to, find the greatest fool. It's actually trying to add real concrete value.
And why do I need the blockchain to do that? To kind of mass that money and get the kind of support to start that kind of education company?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I mean, and again, to be clear, theoretically you could. Maybe you can raise VC for it, maybe you can find the money somewhere else. You could take a small business loan. There are always alternatives to this. But if you think about, okay, we want to know actually where the funds are going long term. Well, if it's actually on chain, there's a full record of all of that. If you want to actually organize all the capital without a middleman risk, so if you did something through, say, a company like GoFundMe, sure, you could do it through GoFundMe, but it's still a central corporation that's amassing that capital, as opposed to, say, a smart contract that doesn't have a human that's pulling the strings behind the scenes. So there are a number of...
But why is that better, though? Why? Because you don't trust the... is it a matter of trust, or is it a matter of saving money, or what is the advantage?
So my personal experience, especially as like a product person, there's always this question of like a lead bullet versus a silver bullet. And I think that, a lead bullet is one thing, it solves your problem, so if you were like a Facebook product manager in 2012, you're like, how do we get to 5 billion people? And in ideal world for them, there'd be one feature, you build it and you're done. In reality, there's like a lot of small things that have to happen. And so in this context, I think there's a lot of small things that Web3 makes better, whether it's ownership, a digitally native form of cash as opposed to like some made up number that a bank puts in a database that they could theoretically change if somebody had access to it and wanted to. There's like a litany of these small things that in aggregate are a very large thing, which in my opinion is like a new construct for how to operate on the internet.
Are there questions from, yeah.
Jay, what you were saying, first of all, I love what you said so much. I think you had a quote stuck with me that Vitalik said in Time, the founder of Ethereum. He said, if we don't exercise our voice, the only things that get built are the things that are immediately profitable, and those things are far from what's actually best for the world often. I missed the often placement, but like, what's your thoughts on, building things currently that, trying to make things turn public right away?
Yeah, great question. Honestly, I'm really disappointed by the state of the industry right now. I think that we have a lot of cash grabs everywhere. There are very, very few builders who actually give a crap about blockchain or decentralization or any of this stuff, right? They say that they're a decentralized project, but really it's just a group chat of dudes deciding what to do, right? That shouldn't be how the industry functions, right? And it looks bad on the real projects who are trying to solve real problems. Right, so to double down on your question, really what my answer is, we need more of those builders. There aren't enough long-term thinkers, and there are so many long-term problems that will just be like walked over if nobody starts thinking about them.
Wait, so what are you building that can avoid just people borrowing crypto to trade other crypto?
Yeah, so I'm starting this new venture called Pentagon, right? And we have two goals. A, we're gonna decentralize the entire stack for real this time.
What does that mean?
Right? So in terms of, you can go and use OpenSea, or maybe OpenSea is a bad example, but all of these apps that say that they're decentralized, right? They aren't actually decentralized. They operate a front end, which is operated by a core team on an AWS instance. The AWS instance means that it's centralized, right? You just need to log into the account to change anything. That's not how these decentralized organizations should be running. So our first product that we're going to be launching is a decentralized app store, or as we call it, a DApp store. Right? And what this enables is you can actually have properly decentralized apps that can be managed by token holders themselves. Right? Actually, decentralized distribution is going to totally change the game. Then the second piece, and this is going to be the fun piece, is where we're at the same time we're building this consulting group, right? Of the smartest people that I know in crypto, and we're going to start working with projects to basically take them from 0 to 100. Right? And be able to consult with them across the board in terms of, okay, what does it look like to get capital in a post-VC world? Or B, what does it look like to develop a go-to-market strategy? The combination of these two things leads to a completely decentralized stack, where anybody with an idea can actually go and deliver on the idea using our contribution layer, and then they can distribute the idea using our app store.
I have that's kind of, I think, presupposed in most of the things that you guys are suggesting, is that at scale, any of this actually works. So like, for example, building the infrastructure piece on compute, right? And then you mentioned AWS, all these things. You know, I think it's like 28% of all of Ethereum even runs on AWS. So if you look at the stack, the full stack of a reality stack, where there's energy, there's compute, there's hardware, there's software experience, service is kind of the stack of all this. That compute will be decentralized at scale seems to me a bit naive. And I don't want to hear any Ethereum 2.0 nonsense. It's like, at scale, how does decentralization actually work? Because the example that you gave there was sort of poking fun at every AWS instances, but then you gave a front end example. So then how will compute actually be decentralized going forward? Do we really think, is it this sort of silly view of like, I'm just not aware? Is it like, hey, broadband back in the day, it's like, oh, nobody's going to be, your 56K modem is not going to be able to live stream things in the future because people didn't know about Moore's Law? Is what, for you guys, is the breakthrough that at scale you can actually have something like decentralization beyond a couple million people who are really into this space at the moment?
Want to start with
Did that
Yeah.
question make sense?
Yeah, if let me take a stab at it. You tell me if I'm hitting on it. The long story short is it remains to be seen. Right? We don't know how this stuff works at scale, right? Right now it's just a bunch of nerds doing their little experiment on Twitter, right? But we don't know how any of this will actually work in the real world, right? But what I'd like to say is that at its core it's an incentive problem, right? It's an incentive problem in how do you actually decentralize the stack properly. And crypto is developed to fix incentives and to program incentives, right? And that's where you see things like the Graph protocol come along and say, hey, we're going to decentralize the back end of every single DApp. And we're going to do that by basically incentivizing people to each run their own instance of AWS, or their equivalent of AWS, right? So what you've enabled here is you've transitioned this problem from a technological problem into an incentive problem. And I think that's a trend that we will continue to see, and that crypto is uniquely positioned to solve.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think that, again, coming back to this conversation of like centralization versus decentralization, I think that the reality is that most of the Web 2 world, you're centralizing ownership, technology, and decision-making all within the same house. I think anything that starts to push on that, so tokens start to spread ownership out, DAOs start to spread decision-making out, and at the technology layer, I agree, people running their own nodes on certain chains or starting to have multiple points of access into infrastructure, I think increases the level of decentralization. I think rather than an absolute, anything that moves in that direction is at least a push away from like the shore of centralization that we're on now to like hopefully a much better version of the internet where things are more decentralized, even if not completely and fully and absolutely decentralized.
Or probably some kind of hybrid future, I think is probably more. Anyway, yeah.
The answer he was looking for was I
42.
agree. You tried. You're both, neither of you get points.
Okay. Okay.
Anyone else have a question I don't understand? Yep.
So my question kind of has to do with like as it grows, how do you feel the energy usage, or how will you like deal with energy usage that happens within the crypto space and like all the different parts that have to be used with energy?
Is this an environmental question?
Yeah.
All right, I understood this one.
I'll take a quick high-level crack without getting too far into the weeds. I feel like there needs to be a push both on the technology side as well as then on the, let's call it cultural side, in order for crypto to be environmentally friendly. So on the tech side, you see this push towards proof of stake across most of the layer 1 chains, including Ethereum. We won't talk too much about the merge, but like a lot of chains have already moved in that direction. And from a cultural standpoint, I mean, I'm not the brand expert, but the sense that I get is that there's a strong push from anybody looking to adopt technology to now say, we want to work with chains that are environmentally friendly, or we're incorporating that into our thinking around what we're actually going to use. And so you also see things like gasless minting that are trying to reduce the sort of amount of like transactions that would use in a proof of work world down by actually kind of basically creating an NFT without even creating it until somebody buys it. And so there's a number of like technological, cultural, and then I would argue product decisions that are being made by different stakeholders in the ecosystem to push in this direction so that we don't end up making sort of an unwise decision as an entire industry.
Yeah, but everyone's using Google and everyone's using Amazon. There's like 10 rich nerds using crypto. So it doesn't, I think that's where people get upset about the energy usage.
I mean, sure, right? But you can make that case about any upcoming and emerging technology, right? It's an investment.
No, I can't about electric cars. Or there's lots of emerging technologies.
Yeah, but you look at like you could look at gasoline cars, right? From right when they were coming about, right? This is something that's bad for the environment. But what good did those gasoline cars do for the world, right? Maybe on a climate basis, yes, they did a lot of harm, and they are getting better, and that's why electric cars are so powerful. But gas-powered cars needed to be here for there to be electric cars.
Well, the next moderator is Ralph Nader, unfortunately. So you are in trouble. Both of you are doing how many minutes left? You're both doing a great job. Thank you. Unsung heroes of this thing. Anyone have any other questions? I kind of like the ones I don't understand. No one? Thank you both. This was what I hoped to learn, except for one thing. And I really, these are the kind of things I think I want to be thinking about and learning about. And I hope to check out all the things on your platform very soon.
Thank you.
Great meeting you guys.
Give it up for these Thank you. So Joel, we're schooling you and a lot of other people, but since I'm the professor in the room, I had to call the audible on that one because the most exciting part of our program, hello, we are still on the live stream, thank you very much. So the most exciting part of our program is the Trojan Spotlight. And so what is a Trojan Spotlight? Well, Trojans are USC fighters that are out there to change the world. And two of my students, Spencer and Ryan, where are you? There, I can see you, come on up. Spencer Chanley and Ryan Curcio have gone into the USC metaverse, and they have curated 4 of probably hundreds of projects that are happening across the campus right now, some of which are IYA students and some of which are great students at other schools on the USC campus. And rather than giving it away, I'm gonna let you guys give a little window. This is a lightning round. So for all Trojans representing, remember, this is a speed round. We're gonna do 2 minutes on each. But if you are watching this and you are a Trojan, we're gonna do more of these. So make sure to stay in touch with Spencer and Ryan and myself because there'll be many lightning rounds in the future. But remember, Jay is an IYA student and you've heard about his project. Now you're about to hear about 4 new ones. Take it away, Ryan and Spencer.
Thank you so much. Well, that was an action-packed panel. We are really excited to introduce these next 4 projects. They're all USC student-run. They're all USC student run, ranging from SaaS models to community platforms. It's just some of what USC has to offer. There's a lot of non-USC members attending tonight, especially on the live stream. So we're excited to show you guys what Trojans have to offer.
So up first, we have two founders from our very own Ivy and Young Academy, Anupam Batra and Cameron Glynn, and they're going to be presenting
Okay, cool. So we're actually digitizing your organs. We're starting with notes. we know now that you guys don't want that, so we're gonna pivot. We are all about taking the digital assets in this new digital economy and actually integrating them directly with the communities that are gathering around them. How many of you are in a Discord server here? Oh, that's disgusting. I'm sorry for you. Discord is awful, right? Everybody, do you guys like being in those Discord servers? Mixed experience?
The worst.
Oh, the worst. Okay, thank you. Yeah, the worst.
Discord sucks.
Discord, thank you. Discord is awful. So we're here to provide a new alternative to that. Give it to Anupam.
Yeah, so with that, we can kind of click over to the next slide. And we can give you our value prop. We're building, or should I say biddling as we do on the Twitter space, Web3 yoga class. That's a bold statement. So we're not talking about the health benefits that come with yoga class. We're using it as an anecdote to talk about something else. Yoga class is a boundary object. It's a time and place where you gather with your community and make connections. At yoga class, you can walk up to anyone and say, hey, how was class today? Or, hey, what do you think of this pose? Because you're in a time and a place at the same time. With pseudonymous online communities, we don't have this at all, because you're always online 24/7, and you don't have a boundary object to talk about. That's where dub comes in. We are building a tool that builds the foundation of uniting the digital assets you own, like NFTs, with the communities that power them. This means we're building a web that allows you to connect your digital identities, verified on-chain, and use those as a boundary object to find and make new, deeper connections. In the end, we're hoping to build a platform that lets you not only gather, not only transact, but communicate with your online identity through your wallet. That's talking on-chain messaging. And we're excited to build it because there's no Web3 without we.
Thank you. If we can go to the net, yeah. I know Malia said this much nicer, but I think roadmaps are bullshit. So we just have a little sign up link where you guys can follow along and see what we're actually making in real time. We want to build along with everybody here and everybody who's watching. So please check out our website. There's nothing there except for sign up. So
feel free to scan.
Yeah, if you're one of the first people, you might get perks. I don't know yet, so we'll figure that out. Thank you all.
Awesome, thank you guys so much. I'm excited to know what my yoga class looks like. Next up, we have an NFT project based in art from USC's very own artist resident, Max Dresner, and his team with Tweaks.
Hello, everyone. Hi. My name is Max Dresner. I'm a senior here at USC studying fine art.
I'm Colin. I'm also a senior here. I'm studying cognitive science and data science, and actually just picked up the specialization in blockchain, which they recently added, so definitely check that out. And we're super excited to be talking with you guys today about NFTweak. How do I change the slide? NFTweak is an art brand that we created focusing on mental health initiatives, community, fashion, and gaming. We started about a year ago now, and we started with just a few friends and have grown to over 1,000 unique collectors.
We originally started by just minting a regular piece of my artwork online, and from there we ended up making a collection of 100 unique characters called Tweaks. Each tweak has their own look and own story to them, and they ultimately became the foundation for the entire Tweak universe.
So we're very community focused, so we expanded this community by creating a generative art series called Twisted Tweaks. And we started with taking these original 100 characters, breaking them down into their base parts, and then writing some code to stitch them back together in all sorts of new, unique ways. And then from there, we, with the help of our friend Roland Shen, who's also a USC student, we created a Ethereum smart contract where you can actually go on and mint a brand new combination, randomly generated each time, and it comes up in your wallet as an NFT. And that NFT is essentially the exclusive access pass to the Tweak universe.
With the Twisted Tweaks, it kind of grew our community into a larger group of, it expanded our community into a larger group of people who are looking to support us on and offline. We host gallery events, mental health chats, Twitter spaces, and we also have a system in place where you can earn free tokens and free artwork based off of your community interaction. We're also currently working on creating each tweak as a metaverse digital avatar in a game called The Sandbox, and you'll be able to, as a tweak holder, you'll be able to become your tweak.
Yeah, so this project really started as Max creating really beautiful artworks, and I would bring them to life by adding a story to it. And our mission has remained the same since the beginning, to create an open and supportive ecosystem for tweaks, all people to come and enjoy together. And we're going to continue doing that through many different mental health initiatives that we do by donating to them and partnering with many different organizations within the space.
So we see the Tweak brand as our first step into the metaverse, and we also see we see NF Tweak growing into something that is just bringing people together through the common interest of good art, good people, and supporting one another.
Thank you.
Focus for your guys' project. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Astrana, which is a no-code platform that's helping people create tokenized creator economies.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. This is a big crowd. Before I start on Astrano, I want to ask everyone, does anyone know the guy all the way to the right? Awesome. We know music. So he could call him the founding father of social tokens. In 1997, he collateralized his future royal streams into his own bond called the Bowie Bond, and he raised $55 million, right? And then 2014, Tatiana was actually the first official social token creator. She created her own social token, the Tatiana coin, on top of Bitcoin. And now in 2021, we have an explosion of social tokens, starting with Friends of Benefits, which the founder is actually a fellow Trojan. However, even with this explosion, it's not very accessible to some small creators. At the same time, it's not really accessible for fans, right? Because you have to go get a wallet and do a bunch of swaps and all that stuff, right? So how can we make it accessible for both small, early stage creators and also the fans alike? Next slide, please. So we want to build a platform that's as easy as possible, a no-code solution, right? You can code all you want, but that takes time and it just takes unique developers. So we create a platform you can launch a token in less than 5 minutes. And we want to create as easy as possible access for Web2 people to get on-ramp into Web3, right? By having an on-ramp within our platform, a native solution. And then also, lastly, thanks to Jay mentioning about Balancer, this is something we recently added on, is that we want to create a smooth experience for early adopters, right? How do we incentivize early adopters to get on and invest into their favorite creators, right? So we're utilizing a combination of token bounding curve plus Balancer to reduce slippage, but also incentivize early adopters. Next slide. But the current platform for social tokens, we have Rally, we have Triro, we have a bunch of other platforms. They're very restrictive in the sense that they pair your tokens with a native platform token. As a creator, you don't want to be bounded by that. Why? It's because if the platform's token fall in price or appreciate in price, your creator's token gets affected in the same time. So our native platform token is not bounded to provide liquidity. You're generating liquidity yourself, right? By having your fans supporting you. Also, we're launching a multi-chain solution for the biggest chains, right? Ethereum, Polygon, Binance Smart Chain, also Avalanche. Why? It's because it depends on your audience, right? If you're really big, of course you want to launch in Ethereum because that's more recognized. But if you're smaller, you don't want to be spending $1,000 on minting your token. You want to be putting on Polygon or Binance Smart Chain. Lastly, one of the reasons why, if I'm a fan of a creator, I want to buy such tokens, I can actually redeem it for future utilities or rewards, right? So we have added that function within our platform for people to redeem their tokens for rewards in which the creators can burn the token to actually get the money back. So we're really excited to be in this growing community, this growing future. Right now, Soda tokens is only worth $330 million diluted value cap. It's one fraction of NFTs, but I see this future ever expanding. Really excited to be in this field and really excited to helping communities aligning their values with creators. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. We have one more project. It is another NFT collection with a bit more of a global perspective. It's called Gen Brats, and that team, please come up. Super excited.
Hi everyone.
Hi everyone.
My name is Alfred. I am a junior studying computer science and business.
I'm Jennifer, and I'm currently in the PRIN program in IYA.
Just heads up, so we actually started this project like yesterday, and we had an 8-hour long meeting, pretty much just discussing everything about this project. But what is Zen Brats? Essentially, we are striving to create a community that we're seeking a new kind of brat. And what I mean by that is, basically, we're searching for individuals who, despite possess wealth and power, that have and able to recognize their impact on their families and privilege that have contributed to their success. And thus, utilizing their resources and privilege to contribute to their immediate families and also to the global community beyond their bloodlines.
Is there anyone clicking? So what is special about our NFTs and the community that we're building? So the NFT art itself, the characteristics that we're trying to build in the community, and the features will all be in a different perspective, both literally and figuratively. So Zen and Bratty might be two polar opposite words, but that's how exactly we want our community to be formed around. So those characters in the stories that we're creating, they're chill, they're kind, they're contemplative, and they're driven by a vision for this world, but they're also flashy, passionate, and know how to enjoy life. And so those really translate into unique features such as heavy emphasis on practicing Taoism, co-intended, where like-minded NFT holders in our community will collectively decide on one or more social causes that they want to focus on and draft concrete plans to give back to the global community. And the Bratty elements will carry through smart contract, allowing NFT holders to customize their Zen Brats NFT by receiving multiple traits spawned from specific pools that associate most closely with initial minter, and reshuffle the traits for new transactions. I guess this is bullshit, but we are. Now that I know, I'll not put it on next time. But we're planning to launch the mid-release in September 2022, and
I mean,
that's fine.
Again, basically it's bullshit. We only have like an 8-hour period to work on this, but essentially we're creating this DAO where essentially every NFT holder could, of course, choose social costs to work on and to contribute to. Oh, I mean I can keep talking, okay. But anyways, we're just gonna choose a social cause or a specific project that we all could contribute and work on.
Oh, we didn't add a social, but please find us on Instagram or Twitter, Zen Brats. We're really serious about this, even though we just started.
Hey, Brat, can I ask my question? So don't worry, we're going to repost on the website links to all of these projects. So as we'll be running the live stream in post and doing a lot of things. So what I would say, the best thing about being a teacher is you get to be a student. And so I was thinking about, having put this together, like what did I learn about today? What did I take away from today? And if people want to jump in and build on this, what I would say first and foremost is that in the tokenization of everything, it's empowering the creative community around the world. That's pretty powerful. The second thing I learned is that we are democratizing access. Access to tools, access to consulting, access to bug reports, access to community support, access to information, and access to, as I like to say, goodness, because I think there's a lot of goodness out there. We're facilitating something that not only do I teach, but is near to my heart. We're facilitating new kinds of community connection. And whether it's the community that Maliha is building or Tweaks is building or any of these platforms are building, people are coming together to support each other, to support causes that they care about, to support initiatives that they think are important in real life, in virtual life, because they're built on purpose, they're built on meaning, and there's truth, trust, and transparency in these communities with people connecting to each other not only through the tokens, but also through the platforms. And whilst Discord is one, we're inventing new ones, and these are all early versions of things, so if you want to jump in, now's the time to make it better. And then finally, and this is my favorite part, we're decentralizing innovation. And so being at the Ivy and Young Academy, which is, admittedly a very rare and elite academy for some of the best minds out there, that does not mean that innovation has to happen only here. That means innovation is happening across the globe, whether it's new ways to combat the bad guys and how are we gonna fight for justice around the world, or whether it's new ways to start companies, new ways to empower education, new ways to bring more people into good experiences, and new ways to empower the world that we want to manifest and that we want to embody, and the future that we all want to be in. When I think about love, there's a lot of people I love, many of whom are on the live stream, thank you, and many of whom are in this room, including my son, and the other ones on the live stream. But when I think about love in the public sphere, I think that when I quote Dr. Cornel West, love is justice. And so hopefully Web3 is empowering a new chapter of justice, a new chapter of access, and a new chapter of goodness, where innovation will be decentralized, communities will be born and come together for a reason or a season or a lifetime, new friendships will be made, new code will be invented, and we can manifest and create the future we all want to inhabit. And so all of you who came tonight, hopefully, have new ideas, are going to be taking a yoga class, are going to be reimagining what kind of future you want to inhabit, and we want to see you go out there and build it. So as we say in USC land, fight on, brother, sister, family.